Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to Dungeons&Discourse, a discussion podcast where we talk about all things D&D. I'm Walter, and I'm joined today by Carlo.
Hi there, it's me.
And today's episode is all about prepping for sessions.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is a topic that I thought of this time. Last episode was your idea, so it's my turn again. And I think it's a very broad topic.
Most definitely.
So it's how you prep for a session. And that could be as a DM or as a player, of course. I guess it's once again mostly DM oriented, as most conversations are with this podcast. I feel.
We are two original DMs from our group. So
yes, that is true.
That is our first experience. That is our main experience.
Yes, it's a little biased, but hey, at the end of the day, I think we have some good conversations. So, yeah, you didn't prep everything as well as I did.
No.
So I think maybe it's best if I just start by kind of going through what I've written down, and then if there's...
I'll just assist in the natural flow.
Well, they're really just like conversation starters. That's kind of the format of the podcast, or at least of what I think we're trying to base it on. So hopefully we can just use these bullet points, get a conversation going, and then 40 minutes will have passed at some point.
Oh, we don't need bullet points to start conversations.
Okay, go ahead.
How has your player been?
Okay, so the first point I've got written down here is really an assumption I want to start with for this session, which is that when you're prepping for a session, you've already got some characters written down.
Oh, most definitely.
An area or a setting, and also kind of a general plot. So what we're talking about, prepping-wise, is really just what you want to prepare for a specific session, what you got to read up on, or maybe ensure that you've got if your players are going to do something crazy, perhaps.
Yeah.
So the first thing, what I think is the most important part of that, is having a general idea or kind of a flow to the session. So
Most
what
definitely.
you want to happen. So basically, what do you want your players to do or accomplish within that session? And what do you want to accomplish? And then, of course, then you can follow up by looking at encounters and obstacles the players might encounter in doing that. They could even...
But you also need to prepare for if they won't follow that specific path.
Yeah.
You still need a general ID, or a feeling from the setting, or the environment.
Yes. That's actually something I wanted to get in later, dealing with
yeah.
derails. So for now, let's... Yeah, how do you kind of set up for a specific session? Getting the broader terms out and kind of knowing where to go with it.
Well, at first, I think it's important to ask yourself as a DM, how is this session gonna move the plot forward?
Definitely, that's a good point.
Or is this the specific session that is not gonna move the plot forward, but just have some enjoyments for your players?
Where do you find the fun?
Yeah.
Yes.
A good example is a murder mystery. You get invited by a local nobleman, and that local nobleman has a dinner party, and someone at the dinner party dies, and the house locks down.
Great premise. Exactly.
It's zero thing to do with the plot, but it's a great side story they can follow.
Yeah, and it could even be the start, maybe, to a campaign, right? There's infinite possibilities for follow-up in such a narrative.
Yeah.
Maybe in the end of that session they find the murderer and then they gotta track him down, and that's the actual campaign or something like that.
But you always need that prepared in front, a general idea which way the session will be going, or your party will be going.
Yeah. But I think it's a great example, the idea of a murder mystery, because it immediately sets out in just a few sentences what you want to accomplish, what the theme or maybe the setting you're going for is, right? How do you want your players to feel? In this case, it's solving a mystery, right? Getting clues.
Everyone knows the murder mystery in a nobleman's house, a dinner party or something.
Exactly, it's Classer. Yeah. Everybody knows the butler did it, but how do we come to that conclusion? I'm sorry. No, I think, that's a great way to sum it up. So I think this is actually one that we're probably going to disagree on. The next bullet point, which is combat, maps, and also enemies. So what I like to do is literally just know where the session takes place, and then based on that, just draw a map from top of my head. But then I do know what enemies I'm going to use.
Well, it depends on if you have a battle outside, which the location can vary. Of course, you can draw it on top of your from the top of your head.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have like a specific dungeon they need to go through, you need to prepare. Even you prepare, right?
I'd still say it depends on what you want to accomplish with a dungeon, because a dungeon is still a relatively broad thing, I'd say. So if it's a very linear dungeon.
But like, I say dungeon now, but we can use a bridge. The party is gonna get ambushed by a troll under a bridge or something.
No, then you would of course have to prepare.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have something specific in mind, then of course you'll want to have a map there. But then I'd say it kind of ties into like looking for enemies. That's making an encounter interesting, I guess, because you can like fight bandits on a bridge and it'll just be uneventful. Or you can put a troll on the bridge, and all of a sudden there's a chance it's gonna come down, for instance.
The bridge?
Yeah, if the troll's heavy.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just a strange example, maybe not a great way to say it. But yeah, I think that's interesting. Like, writing engaging encounters that aren't just, enemies are here, you are here, now go fight.
Yeah. I find it very hard to pick out the right enemies for the right combat encounters, because you want enemies that are like natural to that kind of habitat.
Mm-hmm.
So I often find myself searching the internet for like the right monster type, which would fit with this area.
Mm-hmm.
How do you solve that problem?
Well, I think I know most of the monster manual. Like, I know most of the monsters.
I significantly know less.
Yeah. So, because it's actually, what you said is also kind of the case for me, is that I look at an area that the players are going through, and I look for enemies that are kind of a part of that area. So if they're going to a snowy mountain, then a good example of an enemy that I would choose would be a Yeti, for instance. But I usually want to read up on the lore of how Yetis work, see how they would, how that comedy kind of would play out, because it's actually kind of interesting.
I very much agree on that. I don't know anything about Yetis, but
it's just for the example in this case, what Yetis can do, because they're fully white, really, they can just hide in the snow, and all you see is like two blue eyes sticking out. So you can set up a great ambush, right? And that's not what you'd associate with a Yeti, because you'd think it's just this burling brute. But you can still make an encounter where you can perhaps have like a little factor of stealth or like an ambush. So I think a lot of creature stat blocks that are specifically tied to an environment will have some facet or factor that'll help them use that environment in a unique way.
Yeah. So
that's something that I would use. Of course, that's not the case for every creature, but usually you'll be able to do something. And even then, if you look into lore, you'll find some interesting way to set up an encounter. So if I were to pitch you a desert, you could go for Gargoyles, for instance, which is a really specific creature. But
you can also go for dust devils.
Yes. Actually, not as familiar with dust devils, but
no, I think Well, I had elemental in mind, but I'm not sure it's called dust devil anymore.
Well, whatever.
It's just...
My point is that Jaguars have like some really great flavor text where they... it physically hurts them to lie. So if you set up an ambush encounter with them, you can do some really cool like inside rules and kind of imply that once the players get the overhand, and maybe the Jaguars have some kind of information, now they can use them being physically hurt when they're saying something as an indication of them lying. And that like entire small tidbit can become a huge part of the encounter. So I think with virtually any creature that you could choose, there's something interesting to do with it.
Yes.
But you do need to like see what matches with an environment. And I think for you maybe, or for people that are less experienced, or maybe don't know as many monsters by heart. Well, I wouldn't say by heart, just generally know them, right? If you could pitch me an environment, you say something random, right? Like try it.
That's actually big jungle.
A jungle.
Yeah, jungle.
Yuan-Ti are a good one. Jungle temple.
I
set up
had
some
exactly
Yuan-Ti.
the same idea. That's terrible.
Okay, well maybe that's not good.
Well, it's terrible, not in a bad way.
No.
But,
well, I guess they're a
Yeah,
little bit of a stereotypical jungle monster. But there's different things you could use. Grung or so on, which you'd maybe see.
oh yeah.
You could do maybe flying monkeys, or that's a thing. I feel like they're a thing, like talking monkeys or whatever.
I'm sure there are some monkey monsters around.
Yeah, like when I picture a jungle, I start thinking of like some kind of monkey king or whatever.
Yeah. I immediately think of snakes that led probably to the Yuan-Ti.
Yeah, well, those are both valid points. But in either scenario, you've already got a great premise. Because if you're gonna go with Yuan-Ti, they have this entire thing about worshipping snake gods. There's different stat blocks. Some that can pass as human, so you can do like some kind of subterfuge, stealth, maybe like invasion of the party, where they encounter a group of travelers. All of a sudden, there's like a couple of Yuan-Ti there that are pretending to be travelers, for instance. Or you can just say, screw it, there's just snake people there, and they're gonna do their weird snake spells, and it's still gonna be a unique combat encounter. And the other way around, if you take the idea of a monkey king, maybe they gotta negotiate with the monkey king because he's ruling the jungle. And there are like stat blocks for that. There's like a CR7 like wild ape stat block or something similar that you could use for that. So you can even like reflavor stat blocks for something that you want to run.
Yeah.
But there's like two great promises just from having selected an environment that can play out in a really interesting way and have a lot of interactions for your players.
Knowing the monsters that you put in combat encounters, but encounters in general, gives you a lot of value, and it's really immersive as well.
Yeah,
and it can give you a real feel that the world lives.
Yes,
because something I actually wanted to do is how I prepare for a session. Is I write down actions that happen during the session.
Yes.
And then I look at specific like parties that I have prepared in this campaign setting, and I look how would they react on knowing this happened in the session.
Oh, I like that. Yes. So that's really well, that's no longer even a part of encounters, I guess, but more or less kind of looking at how the player's actions influence the world around them.
Yeah, but I think it's very important for preparation as well, because if you're gonna have a level 1 group of adventurers doing some clearing out of goblins, a small goblin tribe that is a part of a big bad evil wizard's plan, he's gonna say, oh, well, I lost goblins. I didn't really care about them anyway. But like, if the same party does this several times, he might say, alright, they have become a nuisance. I will send someone after them to kill them, or bribe them, or ask them to join me, or some other thing. Threaten them, maybe.
Oh, and you can use that as a guideline to then think of a next encounter.
That's a party hook, yeah. Or a story hook.
Yeah, that's cool, yeah.
And in that way, it makes the world feel more alive, because there's also things happening. Not often, but I sometimes do it. I create, I actually let parties or NPCs react on reactions of another NPC. Like, I'll take an example. This evil wizard that I mentioned before.
Yes.
He sent out a group of, I don't know, doppelgangers.
Yeah, sure.
But before they get into town, they are stopped by a holy faction. They found out their
Doppelganger.
doppelgangers, shapeshifters, and they arrest them. And then they look into why were they here, and that creates an interesting gimmick.
Yeah, that once again helps make the world feel more alive.
Yeah.
Well, it's essentially putting the actions of the players and putting the burden on the NPCs, or the consequences on the NPCs.
Yeah.
Which is actually an interesting way to kind of, hurting the players, which makes it sound a little sadistic.
Hurting the players.
But, in this example, looking at consequences. Because if I'm going to send assassins after the players, they're going to think, oh, great, more meat for the grindstone, here's some more XP. Whereas if I'm going to have some NPCs having to deal with the mess they created, then it's not something they can easily solve, because the NPCs, can get, critically wounded, for instance, or they can, lose hit points without immediately regaining them after a long rest, for instance. Mm-hmm. You can do more with that, and players do kind of have this kind of shield, I guess. I'm not sure if I'm explaining it right.
We're focusing now a bit on the bad side, but the other side is probably...
It's not necessarily bad, I'd say.
No, but we're focusing mainly on the bad side now.
What do you mean bad side?
Like negative consequences, but some good consequences might be that...
there's definitely,
during your travels you come across a traveling bard that's actually singing like songs of the party's deeds.
Yes.
And that kind of, or they actually acquire some fame in the local area.
Yeah. Maybe they get some respect for clearing out goblins.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, it works in two ways, definitely. Yeah. But I'd say that's almost no longer a part of prepping, of course, because that's kind of what happens after you've already had your combat encounter. So maybe that's also kind of straying away from what we were discussing a bit.
At least I do it in my prep work.
But you already think about consequences of what the players might do.
That as well, but for one session I look what did they do last session and how that does that directly or indirectly influence this session.
Then it would be part of prep work, of course.
Like a good example might be last session they cleared out smugglers. Then now there's going to be a shortage of booze in town or something.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think that's an important thing to stress as well. That if you don't do that, the world isn't going to feel alive.
Yeah,
right. Because then I wouldn't say it's necessarily railroading if you don't do that. But the players will definitely feel like their actions...
their actions have consequences. I really like
if you don't do that, it'll feel like their actions won't have consequences. Right? Or maybe that the consequences are toned down. Because at the end of the day, then it's just going to be, are we going to kill the orcs and live? Or are we going to not kill the orcs and die? And then in between it, you have running away. But if their choice doesn't, result in a different outcome, or an outcome that might seem different, then what's the point, right? So I think that's a good point you made.
But what if they don't end up clearing those orcs and the orcs end up killing or attacking some NPCs?
No, exactly. So that would be a consequence. Yeah. I think even outside of combat, that's an important facet of D&D.
Yeah.
Even if the players are negotiating something with a king or maybe with the evil wizard that they're now trying to befriend, they make the wrong calls or share incorrect information that perhaps they should have kept to themselves, there might also be consequences. Like maybe the wizard kind of feels like they know too much and have to wipe him out. So you can even use non-combat scenarios to create conflict between the players and different parties within the campaign.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of inspiration to have there.
So, up until now we have preparing for a session. You need to have a general idea.
Yes.
What is going to happen in this session.
Yep.
the improvising, we can actually like discuss that now.
Yeah, I think we've already been doing that.
Yeah,
a little bit in between. Yeah.
Well, we mentioned it. But
Yeah.
like, I also like to get a good feel, for the location where they're currently in. Like,
Yes.
maybe they're in this big city. Obviously, you don't have everything worked out. You don't know every shopkeep that there is, but sometimes they ask for something random that would make sense. Like, right, I'm gonna look for a shop now, a specific shop that only sells. I don't know. Give me a random item. Ball bearings.
Ball bearings. Okay, yeah.
It's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
It's a big city. There might be some sort of shop, and then you need to improvise a character that's believable in this big city.
Yeah. So it's
only
kind of
selling balls.
So it's
ball bearings.
pre-prepping characters, I'd say.
Yeah, but I have very struggled with this before, that I don't actually read in properly and just end up saying, well, no, there isn't a shop for ball bearings.
Oh, I hate that you gave that you just said that. No.
Yeah, and that's a very missed opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it depends. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. Because the idea of a guy whose entire life revolves around selling what's virtually just like steel marbles does sound a bit ridiculous. But I guess the players would just say, we want ball bearings, and you could bring them to like a general merchant. Yeah.
Yeah, but I use this shop of ball bearings just randomly.
As an example,
It can be... they refuse a quest and they just go into the woods and start exploring.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't need something prepared for it, but you still need the general feel to just
improvise,
snap something into existence that could be there.
Oh, yeah. I think it's something that the way I do that is I usually try to draw inspiration from just media or culture, whatever. And I can quickly it's not directly copying, but it's kind of like saying, oh, this thing that I saw in this sketch or in this video would fit perfectly. I'm going to do my own take on it and then roleplay that as a character. I'm trying to think of an example. I think it's something I mentioned the last episode, where my players came up with the idea of stealing bodies from a morgue.
Oh, yeah.
And I just said, well, this is crazy. I did not anticipate this at all. But I do know that there's a scene in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where they have to go through a morgue. Let's try to see if I can, have the character I remember from that episode kind of resemble the one behind the counter in the morgue. And that eventually led to quite a funny scenario. So it worked.
Yeah.
That's what I like to do.
Well, it didn't really work because there's a whole story about that session.
But that's good.
Working.
That's good because there's a story.
Yeah.
And it usually means that the players all had a lot of fun, had a good time. And it was memorable enough to become a story. So I'd say that was a success. Although it was a bit of a strange one, I will admit that. But how would you do it then, finding inspiration? Because that's the technique that I like to use. It's not always what I go for. Sometimes I'll just come up with something on the fly, and it might be bad, but if it's good enough to just serve the purpose of being that merchant so the players can go there, then it's already kind of good enough.
Well, I generally have a visual indications. I like to have visual indications about where the players can go, like something of a map.
Yes.
So if you have this map like beforehand, you can you can say all this open spaces and really think what would be in between, like a city and a river.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to get general feel of the land, like not specific monsters or something, but what would make sense if there was there before I actually...
So you'd already have drawn up a map of the area? in that scenario?
Yeah, I like to draw
Wow.
visual aids
So-
where people are.
This is why
And then
I mentioned earlier that I thought we were going to disagree on maps. I think this is something we're going to have very different takes on. So I'm very
Mhm.
yeah. Please
So-
continue. I'm sorry, I shouldn't. interrupt
people
you.
have a visual representation of where they can actually go.
Yeah. Well, the D&D they can go anywhere
Yeah, they can go anywhere, but
if they don't know what anywhere is. Then
it's
they won't
it's
go
pretty
there.
hard to
Yeah.
go straight down, like into the ground.
Well, if they
But-
got some big no, I agree.
You're not gonna get very far.
No, definitely not.
So I like to have basically some caves or grottos or glades that I essentially know they're there, but don't intend on actually using them.
But do you write them out, or do you just have like the idea of them in your mind?
It's just a general idea. I don't write it down,
I see.
but I have it in my mind. I have it pre-thought of, and when when the players do something that I didn't anticipate, then I go look at the map and said, "Oh well, I thought like in this forest encounter, it would probably make sense for like some spiders, giant spiders, to be there,
Yeah.
or a dryad wandering around."
But you already have that idea in your head
Yeah.
before the players decide to go there.
Yeah.
That's
It's
I think that's a good principle.
that also allows you to be flexible, but
Yeah.
it gives you a lot of. You really, as a DM, also need to immerse yourself in this world
Yeah.
to be able to do that.
Well, I think maybe it's something that kind of happens automatically too. That once you start thinking about your setting and your world, you're going to find that maybe just you'll genuinely start asking yourself, "Oh, what would be here? Oh, maybe it would be spiders," and then you'd maybe start answering those questions before you need to have the answers.
Yeah.
I guess. So I'd say it's something that almost happens automatically for me.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes, in my experience, the party deciding they want to go somewhere, which you do not have prepared, happens just on a whim and incredibly fast. Like, the party could be talking like, "Oh, we need this. We have this big evil guy, and we need to slay him." And then
Yeah.
one party member is gonna be like, "You know what? I don't want to do this. Let's go over there."
Yes. Yes.
And then the whole party just, "Yeah, okay, why not?"
yeah.
And then, like in 2 minutes, the whole thing shifted. The whole plan shifted.
But then
And-
sometimes they decide to go somewhere where you couldn't have possibly imagined them going there. So that preconceived plan that you have still won't make sense,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you can re-guide them onto the main track, but
Well, yes and
that's
no.
kind of railroading.
Like what I'd say is if you're thinking spiders and they decide to go to the morgue, that morgue's not going to be run by spiders.
No.
So you're still going to
No,
need to
no.
think on your feet in certain scenarios. So
But
even
there
then,
could be a quest line in the morgue, like we've noticed there's a lot of dead people coming into the morgue from spiders.
yeah, okay. Yeah. I wouldn't do that personally, but that would be a solution, yes.
The hard thing I personally struggle with is like coming up with something like that in 2 minutes.
No, that's
So-
actually...
I preemptively think of these things because
it's good
creating
advice, yeah.
creating an encounter sometimes it just is hard.
Yeah, true.
It
true.
requires a lot of thinking and improvising an encounter. Can
I'd say
leave-
setting up an encounter is fairly easy, because at the end of the day, you're just saying, "Oh, I pick some creatures and let's fight." But making them interesting is where it gets difficult.
Yeah, that's where you can sometimes drop stakes or make mistakes.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's why I preemptively think of where the characters could go, and
I think a great example of where that went really wrong is perhaps the Underdark campaign that you've played in, which was a campaign I've ran.
Yeah. It was a confusing concept to start with.
Yeah, so for viewers, the idea of the campaign was that the players all started out as criminals that had been convicted of some, heinous, irreprehensible crime.
Yeah, we were basically on death row.
Yes, and the way this town they were in solved these issues was throwing them into a pit that led into the Underdark. So they'd trapped them in these sarcophagi that they'd put runes on so they wouldn't die from the fall.
Well, did it help? I'm sorry. Finish your story.
What do you mean, did it help?
Still a lot of people died.
I can't remember if they did or not.
I remember you rolling for every NPC that went with us into the pits, into those sarcophagi.
Did I?
And yeah.
If I look at it now, I'd say that's stupid, because then I'd have to roll for you guys as well, technically.
You didn't back then.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't think I should have done that. Maybe I had like a list of NPCs that was too big, and you had to cull it, and that's the way I justified it. I could see myself doing that. Either way, that's not really the point.
We as a players did a very good job of culling it as well.
Yes, that's true. You guys really got into killing those NPCs yourself. But that's not the point I'm trying to make, right?
So we were being thrown in the Underdark. Yes. That's where you left off.
Yes. And they got into this society of criminals that had formed over the years. I don't even know the exact time point. But there had been criminals for quite some while that had also arrived through these sarcophagi. They'd set up this community almost that was ran by this guy called Kane. He was kind of like the main NPC of the campaign. He was supposed to be this intriguing, dark character that would seemingly hide all of these mysteries that he wanted no one to find out. Yeah. At least I hope that's kind of what you guys got as well.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah. And, well, that was kind of the setup. And then the rest of the campaign was just, okay, now you have all of these NPCs and you have this area. Now go into the Underdark and just do stuff. And I didn't have anything, or not much, prepared encounter-wise. I had a list of enemies I knew would be in the Underdark, and I had general ideas, just like you described earlier. I think I got to run through a lot of those, but there'd be scenarios where you'd guys offend a certain faction of people, and you just bring a horde of NPCs with you, and we'd be in a battle where we'd have 20 troglodytes versus 3 players and 10 NPCs.
Yeah, I remember that.
I would spend 10 minutes rolling dice, and you guys could have a turn, and then I'd spend another 10 minutes rolling dice, and that would be on repeat. That's an example of where better planning out those common encounters really would have worked, or really would have helped, I think. Or saying adding a sidetrack maybe. So not saying, okay, you guys identified a troglodyte problem and you can take these 10 NPCs, but then it would have been better to say, okay, I've got this different encounter that's not gonna be me rolling dice for 10 minutes that I could get them into with a cheesy, explanation. Just like you mentioned earlier with the spiders in the moor. Yeah. They direct you to the spiders in the woods. That would then be the cause of a lot of bodies showing up.
Yeah.
It's quite a roundabout way of making my point, but we got here. I think this is actually a setup for us to do an episode discussing the Underdark campaign.
Oh,
but I don't know how you'd be into that.
Well, you would have to let us see behind the DM screen and actually show us what Kane
is.
Was he a vampire? Was he a werewolf? Was he an immortal being? Was he an immortal or? Oh God, I don't. Was he a mortal representation of evil?
A lot of interesting theories.
He was.
Yeah, in your eyes, I think he was. That's so. Yeah, I think that'd only be interesting to the 4 people that were in that campaign, 2 of which are us. But it might be interesting just to geek out about that. If anyone's listening right now and you don't know what this campaign is, and any of this sounded intriguing, you'd like an entire episode, please let us know. Because we really want to get into it. You want to know the secrets, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's make a bonus episode on...
A bonus episode?
On like 15 likes.
15 likes.
Because we're only on YouTube now. Let's say 15 likes, we're getting the squad together, and we're discussing the Underdark campaign.
That's just on this video. But everyone from the Underdark campaign is going to be there. So that's a podcast with 4 people.
Yeah, like I said, it's a bonus podcast.
That would be cool. We're never going to get 15 likes, but we'll see how it goes.
I'm just going to make all different accounts. I want to know who Kane is.
We'll probably... like, at this point, I'm always, like, too excited to just do that episode, and I'd just be willing to do it anyway, so for the sake of it.
Maybe we should get back to some railroading.
I think we've talked enough, and we've gotten off topic.
Yeah.
We've gotten far enough off topic to the point where maybe it's not worth getting back into it.
Oh, okay.
So, instead, what I want to suggest is moving on to our next segment, because you've prepared our Monster of the Week.
Yeah, so, I'm actually not gonna reveal it to you.
Oh boy.
I think you know it. I most definitely know you know it.
Well, I know that you took it from the monster manual, and I'm willing to bet I know at least 90% of the monsters in there.
So, I'm gonna just talk about some general lore. I have a thing here that I wanted to quote later.
Oh. You want to see how quick I can guess it? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting, yes. So,
you might already know it if I tell this name. But do you know... I have trouble with this name. I should have... Ogramoch.
Ogramoch?
It's, yeah, it's written right here.
It actually... doesn't ring a bell, no.
It doesn't ring a bell. Oh man, I feared you might guess it. Alright, so this let's say it's pronounced Ogramoch.
Oh, that makes it sound like it's some kind of ogre god.
It's not.
Okay.
Ogramoch, I think I'm butchering this name. But he is this primordial elemental.
Okay.
Of stone.
Yes.
So, I have done this nice description about his appearances, which also says it.
But Ogramoch is not the creature, right?
No.
No. Okay.
But it's a big part of the creature. I'm telling you here. Quotes. Ogramoch was described as a 50 feet or 15 meters tall humanoid made of rock and crystal. His eyes resembled chipped obsidian, and his body sparkled with mica. Nobody knows. This was by no means an accurate description, however, as few could claim to have ever seen.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a...
So it was just a giant rock man, I guess.
Yes, and the creatures...
They're creatures.
Yeah,
okay.
The creatures, but which I'm gonna talk about, are like part of him, sort of. So we have this like 50 feet giant elemental from like before the gods, right?
Yes.
And he is supposed to represent Earth.
What?
And sometimes he just
is it an Earth elemental?
Break little pieces. Is an elementaloid or something. It's a race, but sometimes
I've never heard of this.
Small pieces of rock break off his body and just.
Can I put one guess in? A Galabdur. That's my guess.
No.
Okay, cool. Then I don't know.
Small pieces of rock break off him and then gather mass.
Yes.
Also made of rock, and they become these monsters, this stone monsters, which is his representation of his evilness.
I feel like you're gonna say something, and I'm gonna think it's really obvious, but I honestly have no clue.
And these creatures made of solid rock can fly.
Gargoyles.
It's gargoyles, exactly.
Okay, yeah. Oh god, no. Please continue. I actually run gargoyles with different lore, but we can talk about that later
well,
maybe.
but so how gargoyles are created is you have this much. Still butchering the name.
Yeah.
That basically sometimes drops a piece of his body.
Yes.
That has his personality in this as well. That just forms a gargoyle.
Okay.
And the reason they can fly, gargoyles, because they can fly,
Yes.
is because this stone elemental, Overmuch, hates wind so much.
He hates wind.
It's
because it's elements for...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
He hates wind so much that his like solid stone creatures that spawn from him
So they can fly.
can fly. Just to be ironic.
Fuck you, wind. My creatures aren't gonna like obey your stupid
Yeah.
physics. That's funny, yeah.
But these creatures are also like have small parts of his evilness because he is chaotic evil, I guess.
Apparently.
And so these gargoyles adapt that as well. And
I did not notice at all.
inflicting pain, suffering, and torment.
Yes.
Physical and both mental.
But like the 3 cornerstones of a healthy breakfast, I think. Right? Or
Yeah, gargoyles live for that.
yeah, okay, cool.
They
Really? They're like always evil.
yeah. They are like
Well, they're like
you have this evil primordial being that sometimes crumbles a bit.
that's so weird. That's not how I'd run them at all. And I feel like I would have read through their lore, but is this in the monster manual or is this actually just on like a wiki?
It's a combination of monster manual and wiki.
But it does mention the
Yeah.
stone ogre munch in
yeah.
Really, it does. Wow.
Here, it says so. Shards of elemental evil. His name is mentioned in the monster manual, right next to the.
It's like the first
stat
thing
block.
too. Yeah, as ogre
Yeah.
munch, the evil prince of elemental earth threats his. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's his title, Evil Prince of Elemental Earth.
Wow. How did I not know this?
You claim
I have.
you know the monster manual.
Yeah, that's not a good look for me. Saying I know 90% and I'm not, getting gargoyles right. Which I just hit the mic. I hope that's not going to show up.
Yeah, fine.
Either way, what was I saying? Yeah, it's weird that I wouldn't get gargoyles right, which I'd say are still a relatively common like fantasy thing, like gargoyles.
Yeah.
I run them slightly differently in my campaigns, gargoyles, or the times I ran them differently. So that's maybe why. But I'm curious if you have any more lore, if that was all you...
Oh no, that's basically where they come from.
Yeah.
And then they travel around the realms, searching for places to inflict torment. That's literally, they don't eat, they don't sleep, they don't do any of that.
But usually...
They don't breathe either.
Well, they're just made of stone, so...
Yeah.
But they usually are like... At least the way I've seen them written in some modules is that they usually have like a master they serve.
Yeah. They indeed are able to be bribed by someone who's also evil into their service, because they actually don't care much about morality or something. They just want to inflict pain and torment, and if they can do that regularly by guarding, say, this evil mage's house,
then they'll do it.
They'll do it, and they won't even complain about it.
Ah, I see. Okay. I thought that you just summon them from the material plane of Earth, and then they'd just be like, "Oh, cool, we're your servant now." That's so crazy. That's how I ran them, because this was, I think, in a drinking and dragon session we did.
Yeah.
In a bar. The setting was a bar. We weren't like playing it in a bar. But the idea was that like things would keep going wrong until you'd be so drunk you wouldn't be able to solve it anymore, which was maybe a bit evil for me to just set up a one shot that you almost couldn't succeed. And then one of the points was that the gargoyle would be summoned in the basement at some point.
Yeah.
But I guess that's not how you get them. So then that entire session would not have been in line with the D&D lore.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you can still summon them. There's probably a ritual for it because they are elementals after all. And summoning elementals is just how magic works. But I guess you need someone evil to strike a bargain with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And for a successful bargain, they need to, be able to torment something. It says actually here that they don't mind waiting a year before they can actually in someone's service, waiting a year, like literally not moving before they can torment someone. But
wow,
suffering is like their nourishment.
That's interesting. I did not know that. I'm still
they can go without this nourishment for a year, and still be loyal to this mage.
That's cool. So they're really good servants then.
Yeah, really patient. They are very. It even says that they're very favored for defending things.
But the prerequisite is that you are hurting people actively, because else they won't join you.
Yeah.
So they only work for evil. So it's even balanced for player characters, because they won't be able to just be yo gargoyle, you want to be my homie, and then they'll go no, only if it can torture some people, and then they'll just
I mean, if you're strong enough, you might be able to summon gargoyles as your frontman in a battle or conflict.
But you need to be evil aligned, because they won't.
Yeah, they will just fight for you as long as they get their nourishment in form of
that's cool.
Tormenting someone.
That's cool. So, is that all you have prepared? I want to
maybe
look into the way I run them. I don't know if you'd even be interested in that.
I am very interested. Yeah.
So the second time I ran them was with the drinking session you were a part of, together with actually the exact same players that were there in the Underdark campaign. I think it was a separate session that we did, just for fun on my birthday.
It was your birthday. Yeah.
So I ran them one time before, which is very different. I took the Gargoyle stat block, and I wanted to use it as a boss encounter as part of a one shot.
It's challenge rating too, right?
So I beefed up its health to 145 or something like that.
Yeah, it also has this damage resistance, from bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks not made with adamantine weapons.
So I gave it that and some other resistances like electricity and some other stuff. And then I gave it some extra attacks. And I think maybe I upped its armor class as well to really have this beefy encounter. And the way I like running gargoyles, and this is a can of worms I didn't want to open, is because I always tie them to vampires. Because when I run vampires...
We're back on the vampires.
Oh yes, we're going to have this conversation, and I'm very sorry. I might be able to do it very quickly, actually. But I think the way that vampires are written in D&D is shit. It's so bad. Have you ever read the Vampire stat block?
Yes, you've made me.
Oh, yeah. So, you know that they cannot enter someone's house without being invited.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
unless it's a public place.
Yeah, exactly. So, it makes sense from a lore perspective, because that's a part of, vampire pop culture. But also, it is such a crazy thing, because a vampire is supposed to be this person that's in hiding, trying to deceive people and drink their blood in secret. trying to hide from society. And then we add all these random factors in it that make it really complicated. And then there's like this thing about them. The way you usually become a vampire, or the way I'd say you become a vampire, well, how do you think it happens? And I'm not asking you about the way it happens in D&D, because I don't agree with how that works. But how would you say it happens just in general, vampire lore, I guess?
Well,
I feel like I'm already ranting way too much. But
yeah. Alright, so you have vampires, yes. And they can either drink your blood,
yes,
or infect you.
Yes.
And I think when you get infected, you become their thralls, basically.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And if you're like a higher vampire, you might be able to infect someone, and then they become a normal vampire or something.
Yeah. So the way I like doing this is by using the rules from Vampire the Masquerade, which is a different role-playing game. I haven't had the chance of playing yet, but I would like to get
glance
into
over
it at some point.
Before we go into Vampire the Masquerade, how it's actually in...
I'm going to get to that. So
right.
The way it is like usually happens in pop culture, and also in that system, is that when a vampire gives you their own blood, you become a vampire. Usually they like drink you dry to the last drop, and then they give you some of their blood, and you become a vampire. Essentially, they give you like a 100% blood transfusion by removing all of your own blood and then adding theirs, and you become a vampire. That's also how it works in the Monogatari series, which is like an anime series, which it's not even that relevant. But those are like the two vampire pop culture things that I take it from.
I think there's too many
interpretations
of vampires, yeah.
And then the way I'd run becoming someone's thrall is if a vampire lets you drink their blood. And in VTMB it's kind of described as, which is Vampire the Masquerade. VTM, I guess. It's a way to describe as having like a sort of addictive type of effect. And you also slowly start developing some supernatural powers. Not on the level of a vampire, but above that of a regular human.
Yeah.
That's, I think, those are baselines that really make a lot of sense. And they're very simple to understand. In D&D, the way it works is that a vampire has to kill you, so drop you to 0 HP, with a bite attack.
Yeah.
So that's when they drink your blood. They drain you dry. Then they have to bury your body for some reason. I think wait 24 hours, and then you become their thrall. Which to me is just really involved.
Yeah. And so then, this thrall wakes up in a coffin underground.
Yeah.
That's how it works, right?
I think so. And then you just serve that vampire, I guess. But you also get like stronger powers, because it's like a CR5 creature. A vampire thrall, I believe. So, and then if the original vampire dies, then the thralls are like freed or something, and they become actual vampires. This might be wrong, because I haven't used the way it's described in like a year, because I think it's shit. But I believe that's how it works. That to me is so involved and crazy, and there's so many rules tacked on to vampires that just don't make them intimidating anymore or intriguing. And I feel that's why I like using the rules from VTM, Vampire the Masquerade, because they just add a lot more of that intrigue and interesting thing about vampires. Now we're talking about vampires. We haven't even gone to the Gargoyles yet, but please continue.
I understand what you're saying. Like vampires, they are weird in D&D, but you also have to consider Vampire the Masquerade is all about vampires, and D&D is all about fantasy.
That's fair.
And they do vampires.
Yeah. Even then, I'd say they missed the mark. And D&D being very customizable, I like using those versions of the rules on VTM, because I think that better suits the way I run games. If you like running very high fantasy games, then running the vampire the way it's written in the D&D book can still be very good. So maybe me saying it shit isn't like very nice because it is, it can apply, but it doesn't work for the way I run my campaigns, I guess. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. I don't know how you'd view that. How would you use them?
I would use them. Yeah, I don't know. I never actually thought about incorporating a vampire.
It makes sense because they're really high CR, so usually you wouldn't do that quickly. Either way, then we go to Gargoyles. The way I ran that specific campaign was that there was this group of vampires that had to deal with this gargoyle. And the way that it works in VTM is that a specific breed of vampire can use like blood magic, and they find out a way to make gargoyles. So I ran it like that.
And gargoyles are like stronger than vampires?
Well, gargoyles are like stone creatures, but they kind of like are made as servants to vampires. But then in the end, it turned out that...
I mean, in D&D, we have gargoyles being... CR2
and vampires are CR13.
Yeah, so what is the difference in Vampire the Masquerade?
So this is maybe the problem, because I don't know the official rules. I stole it from the game Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which is actually, for that specific encounter, I almost like stole that entire narrative and just put it in my one-shot, because I know none of my players know that game. Which maybe is a bit dirty for me, or maybe it's me being a lazy DM, but it worked. So the way to describe that situation is that this breed of vampires that made the gargoyles kind of lost control of them at some point, and now they're free to do whatever the hell they want. And they're really hard to take down, I guess. Like,
they're made of stone. I mean, even
if you're a seasoned vampire, you could pull it off, but it's still gonna set you back, so you'd prefer not to. But they're described as very stubborn creatures, these gargoyles, that really hate vampires because they were forced to like serve them for so many years.
Yeah.
So then I'd set it up as like, oh, you're in secretly being like paid by vampires without knowing it to get rid of this gargoyle. And then once you meet this gargoyle, you have like a 1% chance to talk things out with him. If you don't mention that there's vampires involved, and if you don't mention that it has to do X or Y or Z, else you get this really cool boss encounter. Either way, really long roundabout way. I think we've been over 10 minutes to just explain that the way I run gargoyles is as servants to vampires. Or as like summoned from the material plane to serve a master without all of the... I'm a part of an ancient elemental, and I, am evil.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have gone down this rabbit hole.
Literal thing about gargoyles is that they're evil.
Yeah, I don't like that. That's another discussion, right? Whether or not things in D&D are inherently evil, or if they are.
No. But this makes sense, because we have this evil prince of stone. And like he crumbles a bit, and parts of him like have his character. Mm-hmm. They are also evil.
Yes.
As long as the gargoyles come from him,
yeah, okay. But what if
they are gonna be evil?
Evil god is like a very small part inside of him that's good. Say his heart, for instance. Then maybe there's some gargoyles that are good. Like, my point is that saying absolutely evil wasn't always the case. Now, see, this is the problem. We've had this conversation before over Discord, and it was like half an hour long, and we're almost an hour into the podcast. So I think
this is already chaotic enough.
That's the thing. I feel like most people watching this are already gonna have a really hard time following that entire Vampire the Masquerade discussion.
Yeah.
I ham-fisted in here without it really being warranted, honestly. So maybe it's better not to go like another half hour and get really into what alignment means, because then I can't like stop myself from opening a discussion about the planes, and then, well, it's not going to be good podcasting is my point. Let's just say it like that. And similarly, I imagine you also make some like strong points, and we'll have like It won't be good. It won't be good. So maybe it's better to wrap up this little gargoyle discussion. And we don't have any questions from viewers because we haven't uploaded episode 3 yet. And this is episode 4.
Yeah.
And then maybe it's a good time to end things. So, Gargoyles, what's your consensus on the borderline ridiculous conversation we've just had?
They're out there. If you have
that's all you picked up.
No, like I said, they are evil. They serve evil.
Yes.
And they have a lot of patience. You can literally put a gargoyle in a city and you say, alright, I only want to attack, I want you to attack people wearing green jackets. And maybe like 80 days pass without with people not wearing green jackets. And then suddenly, that day, someone with a green jacket walks by. Jeez, the gargoyle appears himself.
Like, the ass beating of a lifetime over a wardrobe choice. Jesus Christ.
That's a very specific example, but the gargoyle like rejoices in the fact that it was able to deceive so many people and then surprise someone so bad and then hurt them and then they're evil.
I think that's a good detail. Yeah, I'd sum up what I just said about VTM, but honestly, I think your interpretation is just better for D&D. Maybe I should have just shut the fuck up. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna have it end on your remark.
I feel awfully proud. Yeah. This is the first time I feel like you've surrendered a discussion.
I think that's something I need to work on. But this is starting to get a little bit too meta now. So I think that's all, folks.
I think we need to talk more on this podcast.
Sure.
Like actual talk. Because you're being way more reasonable than normal.
So now we need to make use of it, I see.
No,
I see.
I'm kidding. But yeah, Gargoyles, that was it.
So we are ending the episode.
Yes, I think we are ending.
I feel like we're doubting whether or not we should end the episode.
No, we are
ending. And
that's
kind of giving me the impulse to not end the episode.
Alright, people. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
No, absolutely not. We're ending it. I'm not letting him do this, people. It ends here. Goodbye. Have a good day, night, evening, weekend, whenever you're listening to this. Thank you. Have a good one.